We are excited to be hosting here in Pittsburgh, and we're excited to be ACC champions. You know, when you put together a team, or when we put together this team and started planning and you know, had our first opening meetings, you know, we talked about being able to host, winning an ACC championship, and hopefully winning a national championship, and so this is what we've been dreaming about and preparing for.
Coach, obviously you get the number one seed. You spoke about that was the plan prior to the whole season. I mean, were you worried at all that you might not get it with Wisconsin sweeping Nebraska? Or were you pretty confident regardless going into?
No, I wasn't confident at all, and you know, it's obviously ideal to be a number one seed, but that a lot of that's out of your control. So I was, you know, they used to kind of tell you before, a couple of years ago, they'd kind of give you a heads up that you're going to be a top four and prepare you for some, you know, maybe media obligations, but no, I found out when you did.
You've talked a lot about how momentum is big and hosting is big. So how important is it for you guys, you know, now that you have the advantage for as many rounds as you go up until Tampa?
Home court is an advantage, and we'll take it. That being said, you know, this is arguably the deepest field in history of NCAA women's volleyball, and the teams are very good, and advancing won't be easy.
Coach, you spoke about one of the most deepest bracket. I mean, look at your bracket as well. I mean, you got some great teams in there. Like, what are you looking from in your bracket? What was your initial thoughts and how you've been perceiving it so far?
Well, you know, my main thought is that the committee pretty much used RPI, and so our bracket makes sense if you go by RPI. Obviously, USC is voted in the top 25 of the coaches poll, so the coaches feel like they're a little bit stronger. And then, you know, they just went 5 with Washington State, you know, so there's either those teams are pretty, you know, close and level, and then obviously we'd rather, you know, see ACC teams later on if we make it that far, but those are my initial thoughts. But the main thing is I've been doing this long enough to know that all that stuff's out of my control, and you got to beat good teams to advance.
You talked about wanting to get a good draw. Compared to some of the other teams, like, what do you think of your quarter of the bracket, how it compares to some other teams' paths?
Well, I don't think it's the easiest. But I just think if you look at the RPI, it makes sense. So this is where, you know, that's what we got, and I think, you know, we had a tough road last year too, and we found a way, and so you know, we'll be, if we can advance, we'll be really well prepared.
Coach, I have a question about how, like, you could match up with USC in the second round. Do you have any, like, recruiting battles with them from past years?
We have over the years, yeah. Not in the last year, not as much, but yeah, historically we have, and obviously we have some players from Southern California, so I think that's probably what you're referencing.
Yeah, does that bring you some familiarity with this team, would you say?
Well, we have, some. We also, like, Lindsay Miller played for Notre Dame for a while, but there's some, so yeah, I think it's player to player. Some we are pretty familiar with, and some that we need to do some work on.
Tori Stafford's going to be going head to head with her sister to Kenya. You know, crazy matchup to begin with, but you know, as a freshman, balancing the emotions of the NCAA tournament is already hard, but now you add in the fact that you're playing against your sister. Have you had conversations with her about that?
Not a ton. I think, you know, I think it's probably the best thing is her parents don't have to choose what game to go to. I don't know that, you know, I don't know how she's feeling about it, but I just know that she has been in big environments this whole year, and she'll be ready.
Coach, you spoke about RPI. I mean, looking at your non-conference schedule, obviously with the NCAA tournament, most of the teams that you face in the non-conference are in the tournament. So you must be pleased with how everything seemed to work out towards the end. You know, Kentucky and Oregon, 2 seeds, and James Madison, that was a top 50 win. I mean, what can you say about the non-conference schedules?
Yeah,
Definitely worked out in your favor.
you know, we thought we had a good one, but you're right. It definitely worked out this year, and you know, it's not easy taking early season hits, you know, losing to BYU or Oregon, but yeah, I think it helped prepare us.
Coach, I have a question about like how the tournament is designed. You play on back-to-back nights if you were to win. Do you like playing back-to-back nights, and does that like affect the preparation?
A day in between is more ideal. That being said, we're used to it. You know, in preseason we do it. The girls that play international volleyball are used to playing multiple days in a row. But I think, you know, this is we've been lobbying as coaches for a day in between, and so you know, there is a day now in between for the Sweet 16 to the Elite 8 round. But yeah, ideally for preparation and some rest and load reasons, a day in between is better.
What have been your initial like thoughts on Coppin State, and just what do you like about the matchup?
Yeah, I think all of their pins have pretty good arms. I don't think they have a bad arm on the team, so I think you know, they're gonna, if they're passing well, they'll be a threat. I think we have a pretty big advantage out of system.
Seems like according to the selection committee, that really came down to you in Louisville for that final #1 seed. It seems like they decided more on like final 10 games and top 50 wins.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, were you surprised that was their decision making, or do you think that makes sense in terms?
Well,
of...
I mean, if you follow our record against top 25 teams and top 50 teams, it was a little stronger, and we split on the head-to-head. So seemed like that's how they made the decision.
Coach, I got a question about Rachel Fairbanks just won Setter ACC of the year. How has she like fit into the role? Because this is her first year fully.
Yeah, full-time 5-1. I think she's done a great job. She's and also say she never ran a 5-1 in high school. She was always a setter and a hitter. She's done it a little bit in the summer with USA, but in terms of you know, dumping and running a lot of slides and setting D balls, she's committed to it and gotten better at it. And you know, the other thing is just how well Olivia's been doing from the back row, and so she's done a good job of learning, you know, when to use her as well. But yeah, I mean, our hitting percentage doesn't lie, and she's a 5-1 setter. So
How early in the season did you notice the chemistry between those two? Because I mean, together, Olivia and Rachel have really just been a dynamic unit against opponents.
Well, early, but I'll say this: I think all our setters connect pretty well with Olivia. She's not that hard to set, but it's the thing has really been from Olivia's side is how consistently she's brought it. She's had very few games under, you know, like under 300, and certainly under 200, hardly any. And then I think on you know, on Rachel's side, you know, we call bad sets bogeys. And so she has a very low bogey rate. I mean, you know, if out of 100 sets, you know, 99 of them we can score on. So I think, yeah, that's how I look at it.
I mean, looking at the ACC, were you surprised that neither NC State nor Duke made it, or do you think maybe because of their late season form that sort of kept them in?
I'm biased. I do think, you know, Duke's loss definitely hurt them. I was expecting NC State to be in, but the committee has a tough job.
It's hard to be a six rotation player just in general. Tori Stafford really came in as a freshman and has been able to do that. What do you think it is about her that's been able to be that versatile right away?
Yeah, well, I think you know, she had been doing that, you know, with the national team and with club at a high level for a while coming in. That helps, but I think also it's, you know, what hopefully we've helped her with that, you know, prioritizing, you know, because we're asking her to do everything, you know, but as coaches, our job is to say, hey, let's make these your two big things, and but I think the main thing is just her mental outlook. She wants to do it. She wants the responsibility. She wants to be served the ball in tough situations, and So mostly it's her.
You had a program record of 7 players in the All-ACC. Were you surprised that neither Chio or Emma made the first team? It seems they only put one middle blocker on that first team All-ACC.
There was some things about it that I was surprised. I would have, in terms of, I want to say that DeBeer was player of the conference, but wasn't a unanimous first team pick. So there was some things in there that was, that I couldn't quite, figure out. But I don't get to see like the total number of votes, so I don't know how close. I would have to think one of them was pretty close, was on the fringe of being, first team. But man, having basically all your starters in all conferences is pretty cool. So good work by them.
Coach, with you being in the same bracket as Louisville and having like all these big games ahead, how do you keep your team from stop looking ahead?
Well, I think when teams like USC are in your initial bracket, it's pretty easy. Like they're very good, and so we've been we allow them a little bit to, like this week, to early in the week to study all the other opponents, look at UMBC, look at USC. By next week, with the day in between, we'll be just locked in on the first game.
And speaking of USC and UMBC, what do you think both teams excel at? That could be a problem for Pitt.
Well, I think we're obviously a little bit familiar with UMBC. We played them earlier, and they're well coached and have a great game plan. And the same with USC. They're playing their best volleyball at the end of the year, and we think we have a serve pass advantage, but definitely they're very capable of not passing well and still siding out. So they're a very physical team.
I talked to Olivia this morning, and she was telling me about how she had a big emotional game against Louisville the first time. How do you think she learned from that experience and like grew from it, knowing like she had a hard time with it?
I think you'd have to ask like how she processed it, but we do a lot of work on performing regardless of how we feel. Like, hey, whether we're high arousal level or low, like still being able to lock in. Perform, whether we've had 2 bad sets or 2 good sets. Hey, the third set is a new game, and I actually thought she was starting to do that a little bit at the end of that first Louisville game. She was starting to settle in, but I think she's just maturing and learning that, hey, we've had some players over the years that were great at this. I mean, the amount of times, like Kayla Lund used to be like hitting 0 going into set 3 and then end up hitting 400. But that's just the mark of a really mature hitter, that they don't let like the past few swings or their emotions get the best of them.
Did you notice a difference after that game, just in her mentality of like overcoming a bad set?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, she's been so good all year that it's, that again, the first time we played Louisville, there's this feeling of like, hey, you're going to settle in and just kill 6 balls in a row, and we ran out of game. But yeah, she's. I think the season she's had, the good and the bad games have prepared her to, the crowds, all that stuff has prepared her for the tournament.
Coach, this is your second time hosting, and obviously in the past 3 years and as a head coach, but what do you think you've learned you learned back in 2021 that you can use now to your benefit?
Well, I think there's we've gotten better with the itinerary of helping them plan out kind of their days. We've gotten better at working on kind of along with our sports psychologist, like drowning out external noise, and I think we have more players now on the team that have been there. I know not everyone, but we still have a lot of players on this team that have been in Lead Aid, Final Four. And so I think there's a level of that they know how to prepare, and there's also some confidence in knowing they can do it.
Speaking of your sports psychologist, not every team has their team meet with a psychologist individually weekly. Why was that important to you to kind of implement with your team?
Well, the short answer is we spend all this time training, our bodies, and so, but we don't spend a lot of time training our mind. And so just I think high level athletics is now, spending a little bit more, being more intentional about how you train your mental game.
I mean, Coach, like you mentioned with hosting, you have players that have the experience. I mean, how have they helped some of the players that are just coming in their first NCAA tournament and preparing? Like, how do you think like Valeria and Chi are helping, like, like Olivia and Tori?
Yeah, I think just, probably there's some individual conversations, but then like, when we have team meetings and talk about potential distractions or things that can take you away, and they certainly are able to chime in and, from experience.
Yeah, I mean, Coppin State's obviously their first NCAA tournament, and you spoke a lot about growing the game, especially as an HBCU. How important is it for a school like that to make it into the first NCAA tournament?
Well, you could tell they were thrilled, and it is really important, and it is another way to grow the game. But yeah, I could see in that last game they played against Howard. It meant a lot. So congrats to them.
Any last questions for Coach? Thank you.